Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, Chapter 1. It's the Yondaime. He's finally come to battle. We still have a chance at beating this monster. Keep fighting. That was the cry of a brave fighter that was fighting a losing battle. You see, he was fighting none other than the Kyubi no Kitsune, also known as the King of Hell, King of all demons, or the nine-tailed fox. No one knows why the Kyubi just showed up one day, but it did. And when it did, he suddenly attacked the village of Konohagakure, or the village hidden in the leaves. But it was not just one man that was fighting the demon lord himself. No, it was the entire ninja population of Konohagakure, or Konoha for short. Every available ninja was out on the battlefield risking their lives for the sake of their village and the people in it that were their family and friends. He's right. Keep fighting, the Yondaime will be here any minute now. Don't stop. Attack! This was a yell from another one of those brave ninja out on the battlefield. The Yondaime, or the fourth Hokage of the village, was soon going to join the battle. The Hokage is the strongest person in the village. This particular Kage was said to be unstoppable in a fight, and many shinobi had been told to run when if they saw him. To know he was coming to the battle brought new vigor to the quickly losing battle. With the knowledge that their strongest would be coming made every ninja fight with all their power in them. And so the battle against the demon lord continued with a newfound will in them all. Suddenly, there was a huge cloud of smoke that took up the entire field for a good 300 feet distance. The smoke cleared and there stood the toad boss himself, the king of all toads, Gamabunta. And on him stood none other than the Yondaime Hokage himself, Namikaze Minato. The toad was huge to say the least. It stood tall at a good 250 feet tall, maybe more. It wore a shirt sort of thing with the kanji for toad on it. In his mouth was an equally huge pipe that he was smoking. Then there was the Yondaime himself. He stood there on top of the toad boss in all of his glory. He was a good 6 foot 4 inches tall. He had on your standard jounin vest that was green in color with pouches for scrolls on the front. He wore blue shinobi sandals, blue shinobi pants with shuriken and kunai pouches on each leg. He also had on a Konoha headband with the symbol of Konoha no Sato proudly worn on his forehead. He wore blue shinobi sandals, blue shinobi pants with shuriken and kunai pouches on each leg. He also had on a Konoha headband with the symbol of Konoha no Sato proudly worn on his forehead. He had long unruly blonde hair, the spiked here and there that went just below his neckline. The last and most noticeable thing would be the white cape that he wore. It went from his shoulder blades all the way to just above his ankles. On the back was the kanji for yellow flash, and on the bottom were flames that seemed to be dancing. The Yondaime is here. Keep fighting. That was what Minato heard as he arrived on the battlefield. He saw the nine-tailed fox in all its glory. It stood even taller than Gamabunta did, not in height, but in length, and if you counted those 9 lethal tails of his that were swinging violently around, just waiting to destroy everything in its path, it would truly make a scary sight. This is what the Yondaime saw, the Kyubi, killing all of Konoha's ninja fervently and without mercy. There were dead bodies everywhere and even more wounded. That didn't count the people that the Kyubi just vaporized completely. How he stood in front of the Kyubi without even flinching was quite the feat, and only he could do it. Just as he was about to advance, he couldn't help but look back at the village behind him. It was his home and he would protect it with his life. That was the duty of a Kage, or more importantly the duty of a father. You see, his only son was just born and he resided in the village behind him. He couldn't help but remember the last few days he had just gone through. Flashback 5 days earlier. Minato was sitting in his office looking over book after book. He had to find a different way to stop the Kyubi. He had to. He couldn't accept the other option, he wouldn't accept it. There had to be something that he hasn't thought of. Something. Damn it. I can't find anything. There has to be another way to stop it. There has to. This was the state of the Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato. For the past 3 weeks the village had known that the Kyubi was out of hell, and at first he was good. Just roaming the country until 2 days after he appeared he just went crazy. He lost it and attacked everything and anything in its path. It spared no one and it was heading in Konoha's direction. At first the village was in disbelief. Why, you might ask? Well, it is quite simple really. Why would the king of all demons just appear one normal day then sudden go crazy and attack everything in its path? They were just lucky enough to be in its path, lucky them. Anyway, the village was in a panic. How were they supposed to stop the king of all demons? He was rumored to be able to destroy entire mountains with just one swing of his tails and also start tsunamis with another swing. It was a creature that no one wanted to face and they were going to face it. The Hokage took action immediately and cancelled all missions and called all shinobi in the field to come back to Konoha immediately. They did just that too. They would fight for their home and family. They were shinobi of Konoha and they would be damned if they went out without a fight. This was not what was bothering our Hokage though. It was the fact that he would have to sacrifice his own son to be able to stop the monster. Being the Hokage meant that the village came before family. But he was not willing to sacrifice his own son. He would do anything to protect him and make sure he had a great life, which was why he was in his office banging his head on the table as we speak. You see, he found a way to stop the beast, but it was too high of a price for him to pay. Seeing as the beast was immortal by human standards and could not be killed by any mere human, it would take nothing less than a force of nature to stop him, a hurricane, a tsunami, something huge and powerful. He unfortunately had none of this. He may be considered the strongest of his time, but not even he had that kind of power. The only thing he could do right now to stop the great beast was seal it away into his own son. By doing that, the Kyubi and his son would eventually pass on and the Kyubi would die with his son. He had the seal made up and everything. He would call upon the death god himself. A being that even the Kyubi had no power against. With him he would seal away the Kyubi inside his son and thus would end the Kyubi's reign of terror. The only problem was that afterwards everyone would think of his son as the monster Kyubi himself, thus making his son's life a living hell at a young age. He would not do that. He was broken out of his thought when the door to his office in his house opened up and in came his wife. "Minato, how is it going? Any progress?" The voice of his wife made him look up and smile a defeated smile. She was beautiful to say the least. Her name was Kushina Namikaze, the wife of Minato Namikaze. She stood a good 5 feet 8 inches. Her name was Kushina Namikaze, the wife of Minato Namikaze. She stood a good 5 feet 8 inches. She was very pregnant and expecting in a day. Even though she was pregnant, she was still very beautiful. She had a maroon kimono on, that had sakura petals on the edges. She had a nice figure and beautiful face. She had light blue eyes and long dark red hair that went all the way to her mid-back. She was beautiful. With a heavy sigh, "No, all I've been able to come up with is the seal and I refuse to use that on our son," Minato said with another heavy sigh. "Oh. I'm sure you'll think of something. You always do." She said this with a beautiful voice while giving her husband a smile. Minato just looked at her and couldn't help but feel slightly better. "How do you always do it? You always make me feel better whenever I'm down." She couldn't help but giggle slightly at that. He was just so amusing sometimes. "Well, you know me, I'm just like the uff." She fell down on her knees and Minato was by her side in a split second. "Are you okay? Come on, you should come sit down," he said while leading her over to the couch in his office. He sat her down and sat beside her, obviously really worried about her. "Thanks," she said after she got on the couch. "Was he kicking again?" "Yeah. He sure is active lately. I can't wait till he is born and I can hold him in my arms though." She had a faraway look on her face at this point. She was imagining how handsome her son was going to look. She couldn't wait. "Yeah, tell me about it. I hate to see you in pain. And just like you, I can't wait to see our kid." There was a comfortable silence in the room after that. Both lost in their own thoughts about their unborn son and how his life was going to be. They were leaning against each other on the couch too. Kushina had her head on the nape or collar of Minato's neck. He was leaning his head on hers too. It was a comfy silence while embracing each other in each other's company. But both of the minds wandered to the inevitable future to come. If Minato couldn't find another way for them to stop the Kyubi, then they would have to seal it in their son, and that was the last thing that they want to happen. They were both realists and knew that their son would be treated horribly if the Kyubi was inside of him. It was a parent's worst nightmare. They were both realists and knew that their son would be treated horribly if the Kyubi was inside of him. It was a parent's worst nightmare to see their kid in danger or know that his life was anything but happy. Suddenly Kushina started to cry. Minato looked down at her and couldn't help but feel sad too. They were sealing away their son's fate. Not just any fate, but a horrible one too. All Minato could do was embrace her tighter to give whatever comfort he could for her. They stayed like that for a good while until Kushina could stifle her sobs. Why Minato? Sniffle, why did this have to happen now? Sniffle, when we just started to have a family too. We were going to be happy. Sniffle, why? She started to cry some more. Through it all, Minato could only hold her and give her a little comfort. It was the hardest thing he had to go through. To see the one you love so much break down, and you couldn't do a thing to help. It sucked. If only I could find a way to get rid of the Kyubi and not have to hurt our son in any way. Damn it. There has to be something that I'm not thinking about. There was another long period of time where they just held each other. It was an agonizing thing to go through. If only the Kyubi never left hell in the first place. Why can't it just go back and leave us alone? Let us live our lives in peace. We didn't do anything to it. It's not fair. She started to cry again. Through this all Minato froze for some reason. After she didn't get a response and she felt Minato stiffen, she looked up just in time to see Minato hug her super tight. You're a genius, Akari-chan. He told her while holding her tighter than ever. What do you mean? Minato couldn't help but feel happy about this something. He was smiling an ear-to-ear smile that showed how happy he was. I just thought of a way to stop the Kyubi, and it's all thanks to you. You're a genius. God, I love you. What? How? What are you going to do? Tell me, please. By now she was staring at her husband with the most hope she's had on her face for the last 5 days now. She had to know. It's like you said. Why can't Kyubi just go back to hell? If I alter the seal I made to seal the Kyubi into one that summons up the portal to Demon World where he came from, then force him in, he will be gone. I'll still need to summon the Death God because I'll need his power to send him back where he belongs. But it is entirely possible with the help of the Death God. After all, he controls death of both humans and demons. After that was said, Kushina Namikaze was one of the happiest people in the world. There was still hope. She could count on Minato to make the seal. They were saved. She started to cry again, but this time it was from pure happiness. I got to go make the new seal and get everything ready. You go back to Tsunade and have her take care of you and our little boy. Can't have either of you getting hurt. That would make this entire thing pointless, wouldn't it, honey? He playfully hugged her before he beelined it to his library to work on the new seal. Kushina just watched her husband's retreating back before getting up and doing just that. Next day, we find our yellow-haired friend in his office over the newly designed seal that was drawn on a huge piece of paper when a boy ran into his office without even knocking. The door flew open and he ran in to stand in front of Minato, panting heavily, bent over with his hands on his knees. He was a boy no older than 13 with a face mask covering his lower face. It went around his neck all the way up and over his nose. He had his Konoha headband covering his left eye. He had silver hair that was sticking up and slightly backwards. He also wore the standard Jounin vest of the village. After gaining his breath somewhat, he stood to look at the startled man. Minato-sensei, pant. Kushina. In labor. At the hospital. The second he spoke this, Minato was out the door faster than he could see. All that was left was an after-image of him standing there and a yellow streak leaving out the door. After getting over the sudden loss of seeing his sensei moving that fast again, he simply used the Shunshin no Jutsu to teleport to the hospital. With an audible poof sound and a cloud of smoke later, he was gone. Hours later. "He's beautiful, isn't he, Minato-kun?" That was the voice of a very tired woman named Kushina Namikaze. She just finished giving birth to her child and is now holding that same child in her arms lovingly. Standing beside her is her husband Minato Namikaze, staring at his boy. He couldn't be happier right now, he was on cloud 9. "What's his name, you two?" asked an old man that just walked through the door. He was very old too. You could tell by the small amount of wrinkles that were starting to form on his face. He stood in the doorway walking up to them with a smile of his own. "His name is Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto," Kushina said with a smile as she looked down at her son. "How do you like that name, Naruto?" she asked playfully as she let her son play with her finger. The response was a giggle from Naruto and his pulling on her finger with more vigor than before. Everyone in the room just smiled happily, especially Minato. "Hi, there, Naruto. I'm your father, Minato. You're going to grow up to be really strong like your father, aren't you, huh?" he asked as he let him play with his finger and suck on it just as his wife did. This truly was a great day for the Namikaze family. Their newest member was just born. And what a great member that child would be. Flashback end. Gamabunta, let's finish this. Those were the words that the Toad boss heard before he jumped towards the Kyubi no Kitsune. With one mighty push off his legs, he flew in the air right over the fox and landed behind said fox. The 9 tails immediately lashed out at him. The Toad boss dodged to the side, just barely being missed. One tail was far too close though. Then the giant fox charged in and took a swipe with one of its might claws and managed to hit the Toad boss in the face because the fox was just too fast to dodge all of its tails and then a surprise from its claws. The mighty claw came down on Gamabunta's face and went right over his eye. He screamed out in pain and jumped back to get some distance. Sudden tepidama, water release, gunshot, Gamabunta fired a huge water blast from his mouth and it went straight for its only target. Just when it was about to hit though, the fox flared its chakra and shot out a huge fireball out of its mouth that collided with the water blast. When both hit each other, it created a huge steam that covered the field. When it cleared, both Gamabunta and the Kyubi were standing and ready to pounce on each other once more. They charged each other, but time seemed to slow down suddenly. On top of Gamabunta stood Yondaime of Konoha no Sato, and he had just finished his long series of hand seals. Throughout the whole battle between the two giants, Minato was doing hand seal after hand seal. 123 hand seals later, he was finally done and he yelled out his jutsu. Shiki Fujin, Jigaku Koka Kaiden Chi Ten Numa no Jutsu, descending hell to mirror heaven and earth. Shiki Fujin, Jigaku Koka Kaiden Chi Ten Numa no Jutsu, descending hell to mirror heaven and earth, change to underworld no Jutsu. All life within a 40-mile radius stood still, not daring to move for being afraid of what might come next. Even the mighty Kyubi dared not move, for even he, the king of all demons, felt the power that Jutsu possessed. Suddenly the ground underneath Kyubi and Gamabunta shook violently and started to crack right from under them. Both giants jumped back and watched as the very earth crumbled to nothingness. Then cracks that were a foot in diameter each, running for hundreds of feet in every direction from where it started, began to form, and the ground suddenly collapsed downward. After a few agonizing seconds, the whole could be seen for all in the world to witness. Where there used to be forest now was a hole the size of three Kyubis combined. It was hundreds of feet wide. On the other side of this hole you could see flames like no other, and other demons as well. Then from behind Gamabunta appeared a being scarier than the Kyubi himself, the death god in all of its glory. It was transparent, but you could feel the power coming off of it. And it wasn't a normal power either. It felt like pure death. The death god saw the king of all demons and reached out for the demon lord. Death's hands grabbed the demon lord and dragged the Kyubi into the pit that was demon world, also known as hell. The Kyubi felt Death's hands, and even he, as powerful as he was, couldn't help the shiver that went down its spine at just the feel of Death's hands. He tried to fight back, but to no avail. Death succeeded in pulling the demon lord into the underworld. Once inside hell, the death god came back out and spread his arms wide, then, as if pulling two things together in front of him, he moved his arms from their outstretched position and proceeded to pull them together in front of him, till his wrists were touching. As the death god did this, the portal to the underworld shut and closed once again. All the onlookers saw of this was the ground crumbling and then Kyubi being pulled in. They could not see the death god. Only those who have signed his contract can see or summon him. All the onlookers saw after that was just a blinding light. They did not see the portal close or the death god. All they saw was a blinding light that lasted a good 20 seconds before it faded down into nothingness. When they could see again, they were astonished. There in the field was Gamabunta with the fourth Hokage, Namikaze Minato on top of him, and no sign of the demon lord at all. But to one Yondaime, there in the field was Gamabunta with the fourth Hokage, Namikaze Minato on top of him, and no sign of the demon lord at all. But to one Yondaime Hokage, he saw the death god approach him and rip out his very soul from his body. He knew this would happen. That was the cost of calling forth the death god. You die in the process and he takes your soul with him to the afterlife. It was a self-sacrificing jutsu. As his soul was ripped out, all he could think about was his wife and child. He was happy that at least his son Naruto was alive. He knew his wife was dead, though how he knew was beyond him. It was a feeling in the back of his head that told him so. He just prayed that it was a quick and painless death. Finally though, his mind went to his child, Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. He got to hold his son and spend an entire 4 days with him. That time was spent with his wife and son. And what a great 4 days that was. His son was alive and he could now live a life of happiness and not the hell that could have been. Knowing this, the Yondaime died with a smile on his face as he fell from Gamabunta's head towards the ground. His last words were, "Live well, Naruto." He died in the middle of the fall and Gamabunta caught him with his tongue and laid him on the ground. With the fight over, there was no need for him to be there, so he disappeared in a poof of smoke back to where he came. The onlookers of the fight were startled when the Hokage fell off of Gamabunta and ran to where he was put down. When they got there, they found he was dead. The battle was over. The Kyubi no Kitsune was gone and their Hokage was dead. The next day, everyone was standing outside of the Hokage building, where there was to be an announcement made about the battle yesterday. Everyone was there. From citizens to shinobi, from infants to the elderly. Absolutely everyone within the hidden village of Konoha was there. They didn't have to wait long before the previous Hokage, the third Hokage, Sarutobi, went in front of the podium and stood there for the crowd to quiet down. Within moments the entire crowd was quiet. Even the babies. Clearing his throat, he spoke in a loud voice. As you all know, yesterday was a tragic day for the village. We lost many men and women. Some were shinobi and some were citizens. They all had long prosperous lives ahead of them. They need not have died, had it not been for the demon. We do not know why the great demon would suddenly attack, but that is not important when compared. They all had long prosperous lives ahead of them. They need not have died, had it not been for the demon. We do not know why the great demon would suddenly attack, but that is not important when compared to the losses we have suffered. What is important though is that we defeated it, and now is the time we rebuild and start over. Many were lost in that battle but will not be forgotten. They live on in the heart of us all, and we will not let the flames of fire burn out. We will continue on in this world and return to our former glory. At this point in the speech, the crowd cheered loudly for the speech. Sarutobi raised his hands to motion everyone to quiet down so he could continue. Yesterday we also lost the fourth Hokage. My successor Namikaze Minato. He fought to protect this village and used a self-sacrificing kenjutsu. By doing so he defeated the demon fox and saved all of Konoha. I am also sad to say that his wife Namikaze Uzumaki Kushina is also dead. She went into battle with her comrades and died in the fighting. The crowd became sad once again and Sarutobi continued on. Because Minato is dead, I will be taking his place as Hokage once again. The crowd was mixed between cheering for the reinstated third Hokage and being quite in respect of the late fourth Hokage and his wife. Sarutobi continued on. Although we have lost much, we can rebuild, and we will. Families have been pulled apart, but they will grow again in time. Buildings may have fallen, but we will rebuild them. Konoha will once again prosper in due time. The final thing that I would like to say would be about the late fourth and his wife. He was a great man and shinobi, but he was an even better husband to his wife Kushina. Many in the crowd hung their heads at this. They knew they both died, and they knew that they were also due to have a child and day now. But now that would not happen. After another pause in his speech to let all the information sink in, he once again started, but this time with a brighter sound in his voice. The crowd also noticed this. On my final note, I would like to say that not all of the Namikaze family is gone. There is one more left, and that is none other than Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, Minato's and Kushina's child. The crowd gasped at this. They thought that the Namikaze were all dead. This surely was bright news. One person decided to be brave and asked the question that everyone wanted to but was too scared to do so. Hokage-sama, they thought that the Namikaze were all dead. This surely was bright news. One person decided to be brave and asked the question that everyone wanted to but was too scared to do so. Hokage-sama, may we see the child of our hero? Sarutobi looked at him and then nodded to someone off to the side. It was none other than the kid that burst through the door in Minato's house a few days prior to tell him about Kushina being in labor. Kakashi Hatake walked up to the Hokage and carefully handed him a bundle in his arms to the Hokage. Once the third had the child in his arms, he turned back to the crowd, allowed them to see the child. He was just an ordinary-looking child, but he was a Namikaze, and that made him special. This is Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. Named by his own parents before they died. They wished they could be with him and help him grow up in this town that they loved, but that unfortunately could not be so. They asked me to personally take care of the child until he is old enough to live on his own, and that is what I intend to do. The crowd looked at the child and could not help but feel a little better that at least some things from the lives they once knew were left. The son of their hero lived, and that was great. Perhaps life in the Hidden Leaf Village would prosper again, like the third said. After the speech was given, Sarutobi walked off back to his home, and the village did the same. Tomorrow was a new day for Konoha.